Hello, welcome to One Moment Wiser. This is Christy Bridges, and I teach Christians to become authors because God speaks to people through our unique voices. And today I have author Sarah Soon with us, and she is someone I love to work with. If I had to think of a favorite collaborator, it would be Sarah. We've done a novel writing retreat and series of workshops called It's About Time together. And we've actually worked together on the Where We Belong family stories series. And Sarah in 2019 helped put together this book, Option Ocean: Navigating the Sea of Possibilities. Sarah's actually got 2 chapters in here. She also edited the book for me because you always want that extra set of eyes. Sarah has just been a fantastic friend and really good business partner, creative partner. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Christy.
I'm glad you're here today. So, you have been doing your own videos on Facebook and other social media, and this is kind of new for you because you've previously been behind the scenes,
Oh,
ghostwriting for people and doing, other people's blogs and things like that. And you're stepping out now. What's
yes.
that like for you?
It's good. It was good timing because I've learned to really put myself out there and be comfortable doing that. Because I always loved to do things behind the scenes. I used to be an assistant to a pastor, and I love supporting her. So, it's just something that God gives you the grace to do it. So it's been fun to share my stories and just get the art out there.
Mhm. God equips the called, right? He doesn't call the equipped.
Which, thank God, right?
Right? You never even meant to be an author.
Right.
But that's a story that I'm sure we'll get to. Let's go back a little further, though.
Okay.
You have a very unique story that I don't think a lot of people have heard, because when we get to know you, we get to know how, you're always about helping other people get their creativity out there. So let's get to know you a little bit. Would you share your story with us?
Yeah. So I'm one of those people that don't remember anything from 5 years old and younger.
Oh,
And the reason being is my sister and I, biological sister and I, were adopted from South Korea. So I'm not exactly sure the time frame of when we got dropped off at an orphanage. So I think our parents or someone died. And
oh,
this older woman, who we don't know who she is in relation to myself and my sister, took us on a train and dropped us off at an orphanage in Seoul, Korea. And then I don't know, again, I have a few pictures and progress reports of how I did. My mother gave them to me, but I don't have any memories. And then my sister and I were adopted by a family up in northern Michigan, and they wanted 2 sisters around our age, so we got shipped up there.
wow. And that was, I imagine, your first experience with any kind of travel. And all of a sudden, you're going from Korea to a whole other place where it's cold and people speak another language, and you're living with this other family. What are your first memories of being there?
Um, that's a great question. I think I barely remember. So,
Mhm.
we had, I guess it was like a 24-hour plane ride.
Whew.
And yeah, so I was 5 and my sister was 3, and she, being the older sister, I was watching her. So my mom said I didn't sleep the whole 24-hour flight. I just stayed
Wow.
and probably was watching her, making sure she's behaving. And then we got into Detroit. We flew into Detroit, and then my grandma lived a few hours from the airport. And so we went and visited her, and I kind of remember falling asleep on the couch. And that was about it. And then the only other memories is like months from then when I was going to school or playing with my neighbor across the street.
Grandma's houses are just safe places, aren't they? It's just a place where it's so easy to feel relaxed enough to rest.
Absolutely. And what's amazing is they told my mom, probably the adoption agency said, she's used to sleeping on the floor, she's used to eating with chopsticks or her hands. And so she may not sleep on the bed, she may not use your utensils for a while. And my mom just said, no, I just have faith that this is, God put them in our family, so I think they will. And we slept on the bed that first night and we used utensils right away. So,
Hey,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but that's pretty impressive if you had a 3-year-old who used utensils right away.
she's a
Ah,
very determined person. And she's a very, like, those people that are natural overcomers that take a
mm,
challenge on and can do it. That's her.
that's neat. Well, she had a good big sister example too.
Yeah.
What was it like starting school? Did you know the language?
Well, I got adopted, I think it was like January, and I
Mhm.
started school in September because in Michigan they don't start till September. And so because my parents had four biological children that were older, and
Oh,
the youngest was 8, their oldest was 15. So I was around them 24/7. And then my mom had us watch like PBS all day long, like, Electric Company, Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street. So my first English word was actually Spider-Man. Because
okay, that's great.
yeah, because they had a Spider-Man cartoon, I think, on Electric Company.
Yes, I loved that.
I did too. So I remember we went to the grocery store and there was Spider-Man vitamins, and I was like, Spider-Man. My mom was like, oh my gosh. So I learned English pretty quickly. So by the time I went to school in September, I had, how much is a kindergarten? I mean, a kindergarten knows a lot, but you don't have to be like, you know,
Right. You're not reading on an 8th grade level at that point. Yeah.
no. So by the time I was in kindergarten, I was ready. And I think my mom had, me get acquainted with, there was a doctor in town from South Korea, and she had a daughter in my grade. So,
Oh,
like when I went to the dentist, she went and interpreted for me to the dentist. I would know what's going on.
good. Were there other kids in your class or in your school growing up that were also adopted? I know where I grew up in Pensacola, our church had adopted a whole lot of people in the like 70s and early 80s. A lot of the kids were adopted over to the US where I was. And so it was common to see kids from all races at school. But what about where you were in Michigan? Were there any other children that look like you?
There were a few Asian families, not a whole lot. Like in my
Yeah.
class, there was three of us. And the one, again, her parents were doctors, so she wasn't adopted. I'm trying to think. There was also a young man, I think, from South Korea, but I think he was born and raised in the United States. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if he was adopted. I do remember I had eventually, and a few years later, we had a Vietnamese boy who was
Yeah.
adopted, and actually he was fostered, and we became really all good friends with him. And later
Oh,
on, actually, my parents tried to foster a Vietnamese boy who was like 15, but by that time he was like had gone through so much. It was really he's fighting my brothers a lot.
yeah. And that's hard when you're foster parents, you want to treat your own children well, raise your own healthy children while trying to help someone else. And that can be
Yeah,
a tough thing from what I hear.
yeah, it was. So
So at what point did you or did you ever uh, kind of feel what a lot of adopted children feel where like an I don't belong feeling or an I was unwanted or something like that? Did you ever struggle with that?
um yes and no. I didn't as much with my family
Yeah.
because they just did a great job of integrating my sister and I. My siblings wanted to have two younger sisters, so they were always not always because we got in fights, but
Well, yeah.
they treated us like their siblings. So that was a natural transition. And my parents were the same way too, very supportive, very kind. So as far as like the home life, it was more like going to school because, like I said, in northern Michigan, it's a predominantly Catholic Polish community. So
Ah,
there wasn't a whole lot of minorities. We didn't have an African American until I was like in 8th grade, and we
oh.
embraced him in our community. But at the time, it's just predominantly Polish white people. So
Yeah.
that was hard because a lot of kids, some kids were just at a young age, just call out your facial differences, and other kids just tease you for being looking different in Asian. So that was probably, throughout, especially in elementary school, a little bit of middle school, and then kids tend to kind of have deeper understanding of cultural and racial differences. It was better. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was incidents, especially with, for some reason, boys just like to tease me a lot. So I
Oh,
grew up thinking, oh, I honestly thought like I would never marry a white boy, even though I had brothers, just because the white boys always tease me. So I just thought they didn't like me or they weren't attracted to me. Then I end up now marrying like he's Irish, his descent. So
he's fantastic. Your husband is definitely was worth the wait. You guys are
oh,
so perfect together. It's funny. When you grow up, at least in the South, you grow up with boys teasing you. My mom always taught me that if they tease you, they must like you. But we don't always clue into that.
right.
Oh, they're so awkward sometimes. So when I met you a
Mhm.
few years ago, it's funny, I had seen some advertisement online for this ring, and I had ordered a few of them because I don't know, it just said so much to me. And it said, "You are enough." And when
Mm,
I met you, my heart was, "Oh, I want to give this to you," right? And I didn't realize how God had been trying to tell you that until you opened up. So you you came over, you don't even remember the time before that, and you had a healthy upbringing with people you still love and help, and you have this great family dynamic with, but you still struggled with what sometimes people who are adopted think it's just them who feel this way, and actually I think we all go through it somewhere. You struggled with this feeling of not being enough. What did God do to where did that start, if you can identify that? And what did God do to bring you to a place where you knew what your identity was and you knew that you are enough?
Yeah, so it's interesting because they call that an orphan spirit, when you don't feel like you're enough and you try to use, performance or other, you know, things outside of your identity to get identity. And I was literally an orphan. So
That just compounds it, I'm sure.
yeah, so there was, I'm sure, it's hard because I think more through prayer and kind of the Lord showing me. Sometimes I see little things and that God can show me. I think there was just may have been some pain and rejection from my life before I was adopted.
Yeah.
So there probably was some things that happened that weren't so great. And then just losing whoever I lost and then being in an orphanage, not fully understanding why we're there, what happened, and then all of a sudden we get sent to a whole different country. I think I've heard, I'm not a psychiatrist or counselor, but there's trauma A and trauma B, and one of them happens like your body just puts it in the back burner so that way
Yeah.
you can push forward. And I know for me, that's like something that I think that's become automatic. Like if I think of something that could happen that's bad, I automatically just, instead of grieving or thinking about, oh my gosh, that would be tragic, I think, okay, how could I recover?
Yeah.
So throughout my life, however, I had the message that you're not enough. I mean, just being orphanage, being adopted, could give you that message. And who knows what my upbringing was, before I was even sent to the orphanage. So I think there was some issues there that you carry on and you don't understand until you become adult, and then you start wanting inner healing because you're like, there's some issues that are not so great that I'm, dealing with. So,
Yeah. Especially as the big sister. In a situation like that, I can see how as the big sister, you feel responsible to protect, and you're not always capable. You're 5 years old, right? How do you protect? And having to start over, that can I could see how that would affect us, because we always think we're grown. No matter how old we are, we always think we're grown. And so in our minds, we register these, responsibilities and these ideas that as a grown up, we have to go, wait a minute, where is this coming from? Oh, here's the faulty trigger, that
yes.
faulty idea. And as an adult, you are very accomplished, but you've kind of come to the point where you had to, I think, choose that your accomplishments aren't what create your identity. And you actually minister to others to help them know that themselves, in their singles group and in Option Ocean in different ways. What was your journey like, coming to the point where you could separate what you do from who you are?
Um, that's a great question, Christy. I think just for me, knowing
Mhm.
who God is and realizing that He is the one that truly loves and accepts me. Because I think that's why sometimes we fight for identity and performance and feel like an orphan because we don't feel loved. And that is where I think everything stems from, is feeling loved and accepted. And so for me, God just put me on a journey to keep telling me at different times He has different roles in my life. Like one time, Graham Cook has this thing where he asks the Lord, "What do you want to be for me in this season that you haven't been for me before?"
Mm.
Yeah, so I asked him one time when I was going through some hard things in my personal life, and he said, "I want to be your friend." And he literally would like just teach me what it meant for him to be my friend. Like, for instance, I was living in Florida for like the summer, and I would go to the ocean and just lay there, and he would just talk to me. He's like, "What do you think about that family? Aren't they sweet?" And just talk to me about things that a normal friend would talk about that's not super deep. Just like, "Hey, look at that." And it just really taught me to relax in God and to realize He liked me, not just had to love me because He's, God, but you know? And
You have to love me because you're God and you're love. Yeah.
how many of us say, "Oh, wow, God, I think you like being with me," or "I think you like talking to me"? I think people look at God as, "Oh, He made me and He loves me," like, pat me on the head and put me on my way. But no, God likes to spend time with me. He loves the intricacies of my personality. He loves to laugh with me. He likes to correct me. So I think it all stems with me finally getting to a deeper relationship, and Sozo really helped. I took not only the Sozo ministry for I took the 6-week Sozo class that they had,
Oh, cool.
foundations at church, or 6 or 10 weeks. And we really dug deep into God as a father, Jesus as, the brother, Holy Spirit as kind of a nurturer. And that really helped me to, clarify, how do I look at God? How does He look at
Mm.
me? And I think that really deepened our relationship.
Oh, that's beautiful, because God does use these different faces to help us understand as much as we can with our limited experience who
Yeah.
He is. He wants to be understood. And it's funny, you were talking about, lying on the beach and God just being maybe a little bit of chatty Cathy with you, which I love that, because who who in their right mind would enjoy a friendship that was all about requests and fulfillment? That's
Mhm.
not a friendship, that's a business. And who in their right mind can can sustain a friendship that's only about the deep things?
Yeah.
We have to do deep things and then have time to really digest them and see them come to fruition. But meanwhile, we have to keep talking to our friends, right? And so we talk about, our hair and these people and, whatever. Well, God designed us to need whole friendships
Yes.
because he designed us for friendship. When he created Adam and walked in the garden with Adam and Eve daily, there was no 5-year plan for your business and marketing, or go into all the world and into the jungles and learn the language and spread, translate the Bible. There wasn't any of that. So what he was doing with Adam and Eve in the garden, and apparently enjoying, because that's why he made them, was saying, hey, look at the way the pig does this. I bet he's going to find a mushroom. Look at the way, the monkeys communicate with one another. Look at look at this. Hey, how do you like this thing I did? I
Mm.
mean, he was having conversation. We forget that. We distance ourselves
Yes.
from that kind of friendship and show up, some of us once a day, some of us once a year, to repent or ask for something and then move on. And that, sometimes you think it might be a lonely job being God, right? Yeah, he loves us because he's love. But what a beautiful gift to slow down and have conversation with him.
Yes, absolutely.
And for you, it was a beautiful gift because you had actually been working very hard in ministry before you came to the point where you were like, I need to get away and find that
Mm.
relationship
Mm.
and not be about everybody else. I,
Absolutely.
I have so been in places like that. And when you told that story of just, I think, having a little bit of a boundary less ministry, and how many of us um, minister with no boundaries. And yes, unconditional love is important, but boundaries are also important. And I know personally there was a time in my life when I thought unconditional love meant having no boundaries, meant being always accessible, always available, saying yes to everything. And that equals burnout eventually.
Yes.
And it doesn't actually help others as much as we want it to.
No, no, it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's not us that really helps people. And I know, as much as sometimes we want to think, oh, we can go and save the day, I think the older I get, the more I realize I really can't save anybody. I can just listen and love and pray and share any wisdom if they're asking for it. And it's God that really can change lives, not me. And so
Mm.
I'm still, sometimes I delude myself thinking, oh, I can help this person, but
I'm the only one that can fix this. Yes, right? I know. I still do
yeah,
a little bit of that myself. And when I was younger, I thought it was lazy for older, more mature Christians to not try and save the world every second of every day, and I'm starting to realize, no, God actually, this human experience is here as a teensy little part of our eternal existence, but it must be important for God or he wouldn't waste that time.
right.
He puts us here in these bodies that are dictated by chemicals and time and needs and instincts because he wants to teach us something that apparently is eternally valuable. And when we do try to minister without boundaries, when we try to overextend ourselves to rescue everybody, they don't get to go through the things that they need to go through for God to teach
Absolutely.
them the things they need to learn, and they build them a character. I'm grateful for the times in my life where people have told me no, which sometimes has felt very scary.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger and my grandparents had money and I didn't, right? Because grandparents were a lot smarter than me, and I needed a vehicle, and I asked for money for a vehicle, and they said no. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?" But I hadn't finished paying off the loan for the last vehicle. It was like, they
Right.
just knew that I needed to learn some self-management, and I'm grateful for that. I'm not where they were, but I'm
Right.
on the way more than I would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
Did your parents ever have to teach you any hard lessons like that?
Oh, all my life. I mean, yeah, be from, especially when you're in a large family, there's only so much time they have with you, finances, resources. So yeah, there was a lot of no's in my life and
Yeah.
boundaries. And, I remember one time I think, yeah, it was my senior year in high school. And we were, I think, in Virginia. And I was kind of being an entitled teenager, probably out of my insecurity. I just wanted to act all entitled. And I remember we went shopping, clothes shopping. My dad, of course, gave my mom money. And when I got home from shopping, we were visiting my sister. So we were in Virginia Beach. My dad's like, "Well, what did you get?" And I just had an attitude. I was like, "Clothes." And he's like, "Can I see them?" I'm like, "Why?" And I didn't want to show him because I just was being lazy, and I just thought, why
Mm.
does it matter? And he was really hurt. And I guess other people had complained about how snooty I was.
Uh-oh.
And so my dad had a long talk, and he said, we had a trip, a spring break trip to Cancun planned for my senior
Ooh.
trip. And my dad's like, "I just can't do that because
Oh.
your behavior, and I just can't continue your feeling." I don't think he used the word entitlement, but I think that's obviously what he meant.
Right.
And so we did cancel it, and I was upset, but it worked out because my grandma got really sick, and so we had to
Oh.
go down to Fort Myers to go visit her for a week. And actually, Fort Myers, where all my friends were, so I got to
Oh.
hang out with them. So it worked out.
Well, that's cool, and there's nothing like friends to let you know when you're acting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Good friends. That's one of my favorite things about my close friends is they let me know when I'm acting snooty or condescending or, snarky, any of the things that aren't best for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Man,
adjust this because I think the blinds and the sun is kind of making it hard to see me. Sorry, everybody, but
I love that the sun is finally out enough that we have to worry
yeah,
about that.
I know. I haven't had to worry about it. So now I'm like, I'm right in the brightness of that blind, everyone. Sorry.
So how do you think that finding your identity in Christ, finding, the ability to say, I am enough, God loves me, I'm actually God's friend. How did that set you up for the kind of relationship that you have now? You just got married.
I did.
And has it been a year yet? It's not quite,
March
huh?
25th. March 25th. I know. It's coming up.
Yay! How do you think that that prepared you?
Oh my gosh. Like, Robert and I were actually, that's probably one of the biggest foundations in our relationship is our friendship.
Yeah.
We were actually friends for a year, and we weren't even hanging out. We just saw each other through this dream interpretation class that we went to every other week. And so we just kind of got to know each other. And then we started hanging out for like 3 or 4 months. And then that's when we started dating. So, and even now we're like such buddies, it's like we just talk about different things that are on our minds. We share silly memes or videos, and we just laugh. We pray together. We do Bible studies together, and we just enjoy one another's company. And I think, that's something God needed to teach me is because okay, so, having this whole thing with, especially, men or mostly young boys teasing me all the time, I had this thing with the males because it's like, oh, they don't accept me. So I think growing up, I had it in my subconscious. Even though you're mature, you understand things in a different way, I think the trauma was in my subconscious. And so I would put my guard up, with the opposite sex a lot. So
Mm.
with Robert and I just starting off as friends, I felt very relaxed around him. And I think God, having that friendship with God first really taught me to relax and just be myself with him. So then
Mhm.
with Robert, like once, because we had the foundation of friendship, I could be myself around him. And once we started dating, it's like, why are you, if I would act a little like, trying to hide who I really am, he would have called me out and I would have called him out
Yes.
because we had already gotten to know each other on the friendship level. So dating wasn't, a big
Wasn't supposed to be a start over where you hide and put your best face forward, right?
yeah, no. And so our marriage too, they say, well, marriage, you finally, can't you quit hiding? And I'm like, no, it pretty much, what we saw was what we got when we were dating. So of course, you get to know someone more when you're married, but we have such a good foundation of having been ourselves. Because when you're interpreting each other's dreams, those are pretty intense. And you have some very exposing dreams, and you're like
Mhm.
saying, "Oh, you struggle with this and this." So, so when we started dating, we just kind of went headfirst into, who we are, and it didn't take long to like talk about our struggles and
And you're not particularly into just small talk anyway. So I think that was a really neat way for God to bring you someone and you get right into like what's really interesting. Now, let's back up a second because people who are watching may not know about this dream thing and your love story. The love story is so stinking neat. I love it. But you met at Jackie Johnson's Dream Interpretation 101 class.
yes.
What can you think back to some of the dreams you were partnered up? You said she kept partnering you up, even though you were just friends. You just ended up being partners a lot to interpret one another's dreams. And can you think of a particular dream that you had that was made you, when he interpreted it, it made you go, "Oh, no."
I didn't have okay, so the very first time that we met, we
Mhm.
both brought, and I've said this to many people at different times, we
Yeah.
both brought dreams that talked about like one day getting married or meeting somebody.
Oh, wow.
And so the one that he interpreted, it was like God was saying that I needed to do this step, but I didn't want to. And so when they said
Mm.
that, I was like, oh. And it was online dating. God wanted me.
Oh.
I'm like, I hate online dating.
Yeah, right?
I hated it, and I was doing it and not really liking it. And they're like, God's, and I knew that was kind of what God was going to use to help me even open up more. And so when he was like, God has something that you want something and you really want him to do something, but he's telling you you have to do this to get it. And I was like, ugh. And he didn't know what that meant, but I did. And I was like, ugh. That was the very first time I ever met him. And
Oh,
so he
wow.
interpreted that part of my dream, and I was just like, yeah. So that was like, I don't really want to hear that.
Well, and it's funny because you didn't meet your husband with online dating, but it probably made you think of some things and verbalize them in ways that maybe you hadn't had to when you set up a portfolio?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with online dating was I wasn't, just because I worked from home and my social life was in the gym and church, so I wasn't
Mhm.
meeting like a whole bunch of guys to go out with. So I wasn't being vulnerable in that area. So the online dating kind of like it was a journey that I needed to do because when I did the online dating, there was guys that I would connect with and they'd only want to text. And I'd be like, well, look,
Ugh.
and they would set up a time to call and talk
Mhm.
to me over the phone and they'd have an excuse. It was the weirdest thing. They're like, oh, I couldn't do, and I had like two
Mhm.
back to back. And I remember one night I said, okay, Lord, this is why am I attracting guys that are hiding? And then the light bulb turned on. I'm like, oh, because there's something in me that's hiding, that's not vulnerable and not willing to show myself. So then I went through like I think I just asked the Lord to help me, and I tried to really think, okay, what are some fears that I'm hiding from? What am I not wanting to? And I knew it's because I had a wall. And so
Mhm.
then I kind of went through some, like, I don't know if you say self deliverance, but just kind of asking God to help me to be more aware of that. And like once I went through that, right away, I started connecting with guys that wanted to talk to me on the phone, that wanted to meet up and go out. So I went out on some dates with some different guys. So it was a journey I needed
Yep.
to, experience before I met Robert. So it was
I just want to back up for a second. So
okay.
you actually noticed that you weren't getting what you wanted, that these guys were hiding, they were displaying this behavior that made you go, "Ugh, I don't want this." But instead of going, "Why are all guys so bad?" You said, "What is it about me that's attracting this?"
Mhm.
And I just really want to reiterate that, because we don't recognize that we attract what we're putting out. And so often attracting people who don't value us, or people who are shady and hide from us, that can come from either behaving in the way that we're used to behaving because we're always dealing with people like that, or behaving in a way that comes across that way ourselves. And you just hit such a huge truth when it comes to any relationship, a business, dating, personal relationship. um, I'd like to encourage anybody listening to just take note of that and say, "Ooh, what am I attracting? And if I don't like it, what is it that I'm demonstrating that might be encouraging that?" That's beautiful. So God helped you change that.
Yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. So like through the whole dating, there was a guy that I was going out with, and I knew it wouldn't last
Mhm.
because there were some values we didn't share, but I was just more like, "Ah, I just want to just go out and do stuff with him." So I remember like we had a serious talk about our values, and he was like, "Well, I'm willing to still hang out with you." And then something happened and we didn't connect. And then it just felt like the door was slamming in my face. And I was just like, you know, I just wasn't, I was like, I want just to follow through and have something happen, even if it's not with someone that's ideal. I just want to have a relationship, just to have fun.
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling like, why can't I just have this? And so I just, what I call, this is my verbiage, I just wrestled with God through the night, just telling him how I felt, feeling the pain of it, because I don't
Yeah.
always like to feel pain. So I thought,
Mhm.
I am just going to feel the pain of this disappointment. And it was more of disappointment that these relationships that I had weren't working out. And you just think, what is wrong with me? So I just let myself be vulnerable and admit all my pain and what I was going through and what I was feeling, and just telling God, I'm not happy with you. And I feel like you just slam every door and you don't really want me to have any. And so it was a long time. I
I bet.
I didn't sleep because I was just like letting it all hang out. And the next morning, it was just, I was left with a feeling of peace that, hey, I was able to let it all, I was again like a friend. I just let God, know how I felt. And it just felt liberating to just let all those thoughts and feelings, have their liberty, I guess. And then God just said, it wasn't so much that he said a bunch of things, it was more just a feeling of peace. Like, wow, I've got you, I love you, and you're gonna be all right. And it's more felt than explained. You can say, how you try to explain it, but you have to almost experience it, because it's not really, I mean, it's him, and it's, a spiritual feeling on the inside of
Yeah.
peace, and kind of like, centering you and saying you're going to be okay. So,
You do have to experience it. And
yeah,
I want everybody to experience that.
yeah.
So you had done what you knew God was telling you to do, but it wasn't working out into anything like you expected it to work out into. And we expect that God says, go through this door, and on the other side is that brand new car, or whatever is on a game show, right? And
Right.
that's not the way it usually happens. Each door is another lesson or opportunity for growth, or somewhere that He's going to level us up and prepare us. But you, instead of doing what so many of us do, and either saying, well, I must not have heard God,
Mm.
this can't be right, or saying, why are you setting me up for failure? Are you out to get me? Right? That's another way people react. Or trying to just have faith and not doubt and push forward, which sometimes causes tension to build up and up and up. And we discover eventually that we've got resentment in our hearts, and our relationship with God has grown distant. Instead of doing that, you've allowed yourself time to feel. We have to sometimes set aside time. And
Yeah.
even if it means we don't get up at 4 a.m. and do our workout, because I know you do that, which I still am just like,
Not at
wow.
4.
But even if it means, we're too tired to work out, we have those times where we say, this is important enough for me to have this conversation with you. Because in our own lives, if you think about it, the people that I know in my life, the people I've lost friendships with in my life are the people who were afraid, or didn't see the value in saying, Christy, I don't like what you've done here.
Mm.
Or, Christy, when you do this, it makes me feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't have those conversations, I have no idea, and I'm blissfully ignorant and end up chasing people away. Or they just go, this isn't what I want, and they go away. And that is heartbreaking. We don't, especially when it comes to God, though. I mean, our ultimate, most important relationship in the entire eternal existence is the one we have with our Creator,
Yes.
who loves us and knows us and has so many plans for us. And if we don't value that friendship enough to allow ourselves to wrestle and trust Him enough to wrestle and know He's not going to just smite us for arguing, right?
Right, absolutely.
I love that you did that, that you had that time, and then you were able to feel that peace.
Yes. Yes.
Did suddenly the problem solve itself, and the next online person you met was the perfect man? And no.
We had some more duds. Not they had some duds, but the relationship didn't go anywhere. I mean,
More that just weren't for you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I got a friend and we talked for a while, but he wanted something more, and you know, and so I remember like I felt cut off, like that's it, you don't have to do this anymore. And I was like, thank God. But I was still talking to one of the men that I met online, and we were talking back and forth on the phone. And then I was just like, I felt this like, God, you have something else around the corner. I need to cut this relationship off.
Yeah.
And so he called me and cut it off, which was great. I was happy about it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was really happy about it because I knew I had this sense that, God, you have someone coming around the corner.
Mhm.
And then that's when, months later, it was months. That's when Robert and I started, really becoming friends. So,
Aw.
yeah.
And so you had off and on seen each other at these dream classes, and then after the dream classes, did you off and on see each other, or was it only at the dream groups?
Yeah, for the year, we only saw each other at the dream groups. We
Oh.
talked afterwards by ourselves, but nothing ever happened. And some of that was my fault. I said something to him like, I asked him what church he went to, and I said, "Oh, are they going to set you up? Have they tried to set you up with anybody?" So he thought I wasn't interested, and I'm older than him, and he thought that someone at my age would want someone older. So he didn't pursue. He just liked talking to me, and he would
Uh-huh.
talk to me afterwards. And so then I kind of knew, all right. So I made a decision. I was like, okay, this was like in March, and I quit talking to the guy in the like maybe November, December.
Mhm.
Well, if Robert comes this Tuesday night, I'm going to see if he wants to have coffee after. and so he didn't show up.
Oh no.
No, he didn't show up. And then my friend's like, well, just email him and ask him. So I did. And then on the second email, because he said he was practicing for a sermon that Sunday. So I
Mhm.
said, well, I would love to hear about your sermon, but I don't want to go back and forth on email. What if we have coffee? So then he ended up texting me. I gave him my number, and then he texted me. We met up at a restaurant, and then we just started hanging out for like 4 months, I think.
I am so proud of you for emailing him because I would have been like, well, he obviously doesn't let me buy. And what I would have missed out on because you too, oh my gosh, you really are. It's very rare that there is a couple that I enjoy talking to each of them as much as I enjoy talking to each of you. And
Yeah,
Robert was with us during our It's About Time weekend
that was fun.
retreat. That was so cool. And he's fascinating. His parents are fascinating.
I know.
You're so much fun to work with. And it's really, God did a good job. God did a good job getting you guys ready for each other.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we were told you can't go on dates anymore because you can't go out to restaurants because everything is closed down. And you said,
Right. So he said, because
he said,
we'd already planned a date for July 2020.
uh-huh.
And he was like, Sarah, I feel like we should get married before the July wedding, just have a small little thing because I don't know how strict it will get and if it will get restricted where we can't see each other. I said, oh, I don't think so. So we talked to our parents, we talked to our counselor, and she's like, why don't you compromise and take the steps necessary to get married, but you don't have to unless you really feel the go and you both agree. So we're like, okay, so that was a Sunday. Then Monday, my sister up in Michigan said the courthouses are closed in Michigan. I was like, oh.
Uh-oh.
So I was like, yeah. So I called our courthouse and they were still open, but I didn't know how long they'd be open. And I thought, what if we do need to get married or we want to get married, but our courthouses are closed, we can't get married. So I called and said, I'm in. Let's just see what the court, because if you can go to the courthouse, get a marriage license, and you have 10 days to get
Mm-hmm.
married, but then, till it's no longer valid. So I said, well, we have 10 days to think about it. So we get it on a Tuesday, like at 3 something, it closes at 4. And then we call Roger Nix, he was at the time the senior pastor of Believers, and we're like, hey, would you be open to marrying us within 10 days? He's like, let's do it tomorrow because we have shelter in place tomorrow night. And I'm like, what? It was amazing because we called our counselor and she's like, I have this beautiful backyard if you want to get married back there. So we went over there Tuesday night and it was beautiful. She had flowers and it just was gorgeous. And we're like, yes, we'll do it. Then we called our family. I called all my siblings. I called my parents, I called them just to confirm we're doing it. And then he called his family and they actually came up from his sister and her family from Oklahoma City and his mom and his parents. So we had 10 adults.
Wow.
Yeah, which was the max, but we were also outside and social distancing. And we took pictures where he and I were on this side and the other couple were like 6 feet away on the other side.
Funny. And then you spent your first entire year. Now you already worked at home,
Yes.
but now suddenly he's having to work at home and
Yes.
you're spending your first entire year 24/7 pretty much together because even the singles ministry that you lead that together.
Yes.
And so how is it, I mean, that you've made it for a
Well,
whole year?
I know. Well, you know what's amazing? We were just talking about this today. His
Uh-huh.
they wanted them to work from home. So when we got married, he could work from home and then they made it permanent. So we haven't known anything else but him working here together. So as far as them being married,
Mhm.
so it's like it was just all we knew as far as being as a married couple. And both of us are introverts, so we know how to tune everything out and focus on our work, and we don't have to go bother the other unless we want to. So we can go a couple hours not even talking to each other. I close my office, he closes his, we call it his man cave. He closes himself off and works for a while, and then he might stroll in or I might stroll in. So it just works. And we have friends, and I might go out for coffee or tea with a friend, or, dinner with someone else, and he might go somewhere someone else. And again, I think that's where, because we formed such a close friendship, we just enjoy being with each other. And, it's like, that was the one part of marriage I was concerned about, that I'd be like, married couples get sick of each other. And now we see each other so much, but it hasn't. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting.
It's funny. We can make all the lists in the world, but when it comes down to it, what you need in your mate is someone you can actually live with. Someone who makes home a nice place to be, and someone who is in charge enough of their own selves that they can, you know, like you said, go into their man cave while you go into yours, and also come back together and connect. So that
Yeah.
balance, that livable balance, oh man, it doesn't matter how much people have in common. It doesn't matter how, ambitious they are, determined they are to make it. Having that life, that living quarter balance
Yeah,
is so important.
absolutely.
I love that you both were mature enough to enjoy each other and enjoy your friendship without having to get your validation from each other and all that, because that throws that living balance off when you have someone who's constantly clinging for validation.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I think it was a couple months ago, we were having this conversation, and I just started wanting validation. And so I kind of started like saying certain things, wanting him to say, "Oh, baby," da da da, da, and he was going to hold, because he didn't think I wanted or needed that, so he was going a whole different way, and I kept like trying to get him to say these certain things, and he wasn't. And I remember was going upstairs to do laundry, and the Lord's like, you need to apologize, because you were wanting validation from him, and you're wanting him to make you say, "Oh, you're the best thing in the world. You're the only one I would want." Even though I know that's what he would say, that's what I was looking for, and I wasn't getting it. And he's like, "You can't expect him to get validation from him. You need to get it from me. Otherwise, you're going to drain him." And it's when he does say things that are validating and encouraging, it's going to come out of, "Oh, he has to do it to, feed you and make
Yeah.
you happy." So I went downstairs and I was like, "I'm really sorry. This is what I was trying to get you to say. And I don't want to get validation from you. And I want you to, I know that you love me, and you don't have to keep trying to prove it to me." So yes, that's, thank God for God, because in our marriage,
Yes.
he so helps both of us. So that was a moment where I was, not realizing I was doing that. And when I apologized, he's like, "Oh, yeah, thank you. I see that." And he wasn't aware of it,
Mhm.
but he could see it after the fact, and it probably relieved him a lot, because he definitely, I love, we all wives love when they do spontaneous, from the heart, authentic affirmations or validations, but because they want to, not because they have to.
Well, and without God, um, I just don't know what a couple would do. And you both need to have God and have the Holy Spirit's ability to get your ear. That's so important, because in a marriage, I mean, God is definitely the saving grace so often, because we do that. We do exactly that. We expect someone to speak lines from a script we haven't given them. And so in my head are the lines you're supposed to be saying, but you've never seen them before. And I get mad at you or feel rejected by you because you didn't speak those lines. And so often it absolutely breaks my heart, but so often men end up in monster depression or suicide after divorce because a woman felt like she wasn't valued, when in reality our husbands our husbands love for us, our husbands desire for us often goes so much deeper than we ever notice because they aren't verbal about things.
Right.
And that, it's not, it's kind of a vast generalization, but it happens again and again and again and again. Women, and I think it's maybe a cultural thing too. We talk to each other and we're always complimenting each other and things like that. And our guys don't do that. You don't see guys go, "I love your hair today. Oh my gosh," or "I'm so
Yeah.
glad we're best friends." Whatever, right? So there's a cross cultural communication gap, and now your husband understands that sometimes you need a little more of that,
Yeah.
but you also understand that he doesn't have to. You appreciate it when it comes out and you get your validation from God. And when we can do that, when we can let God be our source of everything, of our money, of our security, of our love, of our affirmation, when we let God be our source, then we're able to forgive and accept because other people aren't us. They're not going to respond the same way we would or the
Yeah.
same way we want them to. That has really that's come home to me again and again, but it I'm going through some issues right now in a relationship that I'm really realizing that again, that we aren't, no matter how much we communicate our needs, we are not always gonna get what we want in response, and we have to be able to be okay with that and get it from God.
Oh, I know. I know.
Mm. Sarah, it is wonderful to talk to you, and I seriously could talk to you about this all day long, but, I'd like to just for a second,
Hmm.
um, I'd like to share I'll just ask you, what is a verse that has really spoken to you that you really like? Do you have a favorite verse or something that's sustaining you?
I have so many, but probably
Yeah.
the one that helps me so much through all different things is to cast your cares upon the Lord because He cares for you. And the one that corresponds with that is in Philippians where it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to the Lord." So that
Yeah.
is my sustaining because then I'm like reminding myself. Because I don't know why, maybe it's just me, but sometimes you just carry on stress and pressure and you think you have to figure it out. And then you're like, wait, I am not supposed to be anxious. I am not supposed to be the one solving this problem.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So true. And, we're open to God's answers when we allow Him to be the source. My own marriage, I think the best advice I ever got was from my mom when she said, "You're not your husband's Holy Spirit." It kind of goes along with that. Just let God do His work. And I don't have to just fix it all and to control it all.
Absolutely not. Thank God.
Oh,
Thank God.
you are such a blessing. Where can people see more of your writings, hear your videos, get to know you? What would you like to share?
My website is Sarah Soon, SarahSoon. So Sarah Soon is my pen name, and
Awesome.
that's, yeah, I went under Sarah Soon for the devotional, and then my Facebook is, I think,
Sarah Soon also, I believe, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so we'll post a link in the comments, but please check out Sarah's
yes,
work. And if you need editing done, if you need ghostwriting done, if you want to get a head start on her new novel, get to know about it when it comes out, then follow Sarah or reach out to her and tell her what you need.
yes. I love.
God bless you all. This is Christy Bridges from One Moment Wiser and Sarah Soon, and it's been our pleasure to be here with you today. If you have a story that you'd like to share, a story of how God has shifted your perspective or come through for you in your life, I would love to hear it. So reach out to me at One Moment Wiser. The number one, Moment Wiser. Bye bye.
Bye.